meeting of November 10. Present we have Michael Dawson, Johan Bergstrom, Alexis Campaila, myself, Hans Christian Flatten, Joao Reis, Rod Bag, Miles Borins, and Ryan Graham. So we can start with a quick stand-up, see what everybody's been up to related to Build since the last meeting, which was 6 weeks ago. So quite a lot happened. But we can go in order of attendees as listed in the minutes doc. So Michael Dawson is first.
Okay, so since it's been 6 weeks, I think within that time span I've added PPC to the regression tests. I was away at a couple conferences and have been pretty focused on getting the IBM 4.x release out, so not as much time to the build side as I might have liked. Did spend a little bit of time keeping the PPC machines live, although they've seemed to have been pretty good over the last couple of weeks, which is good. And I'm still trying to get some AIX machines to add to the CI. But I have not succeeded on that front yet.
It's because you don't have the hardware, or?
It's because it's not something like, if you looked at all the open source communities out there, it hasn't been a regular thing for us to get AIX machines into the CIs. So there's no existing pattern that I can just go and follow. So I'm trying to spring, funding and/or a mechanism to get machines available. There's general support for the idea, and so I talked to the AIX team, and they're willing to put money into their budget, but the way budgets work is that might happen next year, first half of next year, which I think is too late. So I'm still trying to see if we can push harder to find something sooner than that.
I see. So it's more of a budget internal IBM issue than a technical issue per se.
Yeah, it's not a technical issue at all. It's more of this hasn't been commonly done, so doing it the first time is harder than you'd expect.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah,
it'd be great, especially since I saw a few things fly by in the Node.js repo. So it'd just be great to have more eyes on the review, I guess, and test pass.
Yep. No, I'm 100%. I really wish I could get them tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I forwarded on all your feedback, which is good, to the team, saying, look, this is clear evidence. We really need to do this because that the community wants to see what's going on, and it's only going to be better for me as well, right? Because otherwise I have to investigate issues and stuff that otherwise people could help out with.
Yeah.
Cool. That was Michael's stand-up. Anything else, Michael?
That's it.
So next is Johan.
Okay. A few things. I haven't organized this enough, but I'm just going to walk through the issues. So first of all, me and Rod have been looking at backing up the Jenkins CI hosts, which we started probably a month or so ago. So we now have a nightly script running from our WW machine. So we rsync the entire folder. And the way Jenkins server works is that it pretty much, it's a bit of magic, but it serializes most of the configuration and especially the jobs and artifacts onto disk. So if you just rsync the folder, you're good to go. So, and we've actually tried that it works as intended as well. I guess we'll get to the Jenkins host later, so we don't have to dwell too much on that. I've also done some work on replacing our Voxer FreeBSD architecture. We've been talking to Voxer about the resources we have there, and we're still talking about it, so there's nothing final, but they've flagged that the resources will still be available, but if anything's happened to it, they won't be able to support us any longer. So the only logical way forward for us as a build group is to replace it with, other places where we have full control over the hardware or virtualized hardware.
Right.
So
I can't remember, was FreeBSD on the list of soft layer?
No, so Voxer Sorry if my English is poor. So Voxer is it's a sponsor we've had around for a long while. I think Fedor works there, or at least used to. I'm not sure any longer. And yeah, so they've been providing us free BSD jails, as well as OS X build and release slaves. So big emphasis on the OS X stuff, because now we are actually running out of hardware to run the OS X stuff on. So that's a big concern for us right now. I did a quick poll in the community to get more FreeBSD support, but it hasn't come through just yet. But for now, I've just booted 2 more slaves on DigitalOcean, and we'll just look at what we can do to grow the list of supported from other hardware vendors, I guess.
That's what I was just trying to remember, whether SoftLayer supported that OS, because if it does, I could spin up a couple.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
I'll have to go back and take a look again. I don't remember off the top of my head. So.
Okay.
Maybe you can even run on Azure.
Yeah, I don't know, but if you guys know more, that'd be amazing. I think that the big emphasis right now, though, if you are asking around, is obviously getting a long-time partner for the OS X stuff. I think, worst case, both me and Rod, we have like a Mac Mini sitting around we can use, but it's not really a preferred solution.
But there's still no way to virtualize OS X, is that correct?
I think you can from OS X itself. It's just that you probably need a bit beefier hardware than a Mac Mini.
But you still need a physical machine to host it. You cannot put it in the cloud.
No, not that I know. So you need a physical machine.
So we've got 2 Mac Minis in Voxer now. They're just Mac Minis. They're beefy Mac Minis, and they are each running 2 VMs to run all our hosts for current. That's how we're currently anyway. That works fine, and we could even expand that a little bit. I think they could handle running another VM each at least. We're getting enough performance out of them.
Yeah, so it's more about the hardware and like physical storage, or just having a place that's not a closet in a sense. So that's a thing we as a group need to figure out. Another thing I've been working on is looking at improving the communication between Jenkins and GitHub in terms of posting updates on the build process. I think this is a pretty great thing in terms of feedback for the collaborators to Node.js, but also making test fails more visible. There's a few things still to go there. Especially, I'm going to rewrite how it worked. It previously worked by posting to the GitHub API through the different build steps at Jenkins, but there's concerns with storing credentials at Jenkins, which just makes it easier to move everything outside of Jenkins. So that's on my agenda now. And the other concern is that since GitHub only has really 2 visible states in terms of when a build completes, which is failure or pass, it's a bit hard for us to make flaky tests more visible, as they are in Jenkins, but I'm visualizing it by mentioning that, hey, tests pass, but we have this many flaky ones. So that's something we're going to have to think about if we want to change.
So can you include actually that in the text?
Yeah, I've already done it. So I parsed when a test is, so for every machine, they will get their own line in the build, the GitHub build status. If you look below, like at the end of a PR, you can see like that. So Linux will get one, SmartOS will get one, and so on and so forth. And as part of the text, I will write how many skips or how many total tests, and if there are failures, how many failures.
Okay, that's great. So that still requires that people click on that button to expand the status, right? Because
no, if everything passes, it will just be green. But if there's a fail, it will expand. So the problem again is flaky in that scenario. And I don't really know how to handle it unless we change the strategy on flaky and say it's actually a fail. I guess the best part is that Rich Trott and other people has been like doing so much progress in terms of fixing flaky tests. So that's at least, you know, something that would alleviate the problem as we go along. But yeah, it's a bit of an unsolved problem.
In case it comes up, the GitHub UI only shows 100 of those statuses. I discovered the hard way. You can put as many as you want, but it'll only, in that little expansion box, it'll only actually show 100 of them.
Okay, so like 100 different unique identifiers.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you break it up like per test or something like that, then that's where that comes into play.
Yeah. So what I've done right now is broken it up into the same categories we have as part of the test commit job. So there's like the linter, and then there's Linux and Windows and the ARM fan and so on and so forth. So that shouldn't be a problem. Moving on, yeah. So, and I've also been working on a few users. I think Jordan, the guy that co-maintains NVM, reported that there's been issues with SSL certificates, and I essentially tracked it down to it being older versions of wget not supporting SNI, which then in turn returns the default certificate for the Nginx instance we're running, which is the Node.js certificate when he was expecting the IOJS. So the way around this is essentially just adding another IP to our DigitalOcean instance and serving IOJS and Node.js from different IPs. I haven't completed it. It's a bit tedious to work with DigitalOcean's like floating IP service, but especially scripting it in Ansible. That's really the bummer at the moment. But it's ongoing, and there's an issue about it if you guys want to help out. Yeah, and then I guess as part of kind of setting up the new CI, I've found a lot of smaller things as part of Ansible I've been working on, as well as a bigger refactor in Ansible, which should cover, you know, being able to reuse more of the scripts we already have in place. So just breaking out the common work and making sure that works. I've probably done some other stuff I've forgotten about as well, but let's just move on.
Cool. Let's move forward with the stand-up. So I'm next. Well, the thing that I've been mostly working on and kind of in my ivory tower is the native module build service. I think it's issue 151. I've been researching the best way to go about it, and I'm currently writing a proposal. And I'm going to post it on the issue this week. So I guess it's premature to talk about it now. And what else? I've been providing moral and design support to Joao, who's been doing a lot more work actually on build. So I'll let him talk about it. Next is Hans.
Yeah, mostly doing Docker working group stuff, but in between preparing for reporting Jenkins downtimes to IRC channel if we decide to move off Gitter.
So the build working group officially moved to IRC Cloud, right? Or to IRC?
I don't think there's an official decision as of yet. I started a poll just seeing, just checking interest. I guess the main concerns with Gitter is that it's pretty tedious to have running in your browser. It's just clunky and annoying. And the biggest downside of using IRC, I guess, is that you lose out on history if you're not always connected. So,
how about Slack?
Yeah, that's an option as well. So I'm pretty. Yeah.
The advantage of Slack, I find, is that it actually sends you an email reminding you that you haven't looked at some things that had your name in them, which is quite good, versus IRC if you're not watching at the time.
Yeah, I feel like we had this conversation a few times before. Is there an issue in GitHub to track the decision-making process?
Not really. Yeah, I can create one, and we can just have a bit more formal discussion there.
Yeah, that would be good to have more transparency over the decision.
Yep. Done.
Great. Next is Joao.
Yes, I worked on distributing the compilation for ARM. I don't know if this was within the last 6 weeks, but close to that. And then I added the Windows 10 servers to CI with some more Windows 2008 and 2012. And since the new servers were too slow, I used part of what I have done for ARM and created the Windows fan job to speed up compilation and running the tests for Windows. Part of this, I created the Ansible scripts to install Windows. There's a pull request for that. And last week I created a Jenkins job to stress one test to make sure it is flaky or not. That was erased when the Jenkins went down, but this week I'm going to look at it again and try to deploy it. Right now I'm redeploying the Windows servers. I'm still looking at SSH for Windows. I have some progress on using SSH to connect to a Windows machine, but I'm still not sure if it's going to be possible. That's it for me.
Yes, this SSH issue, I think we need to bump up in priority. The connectivity of Jenkins slaves has been affecting us quite a bit.
Yes, to make them more stable.
And there is some empirical evidence that the SSH connection would solve that problem. So if we can find a way to move a couple more slaves to that approach to prove that it's
So that's related to the emails we get about machines being connected and disconnected, or
yes. So machines disconnect randomly during runs, so they fail runs. And now that we have more and more machines, and especially the Azure ones are very prone to this, it's becoming increasingly a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit concerned about this because, at least from how much I've looked at the problem, it seems to be pretty new in terms of the just frequent disconnects. I mean, we've seen issues with the Windows slaves for a while, especially the Azure ones, but I mean, if you look at the ARM slaves, I've never seen them disconnect like mid-testing prior to us updating to, I think, 1.635 or 1.634, or which one it was. I haven't found an issue on their tracker, but it's just something that looks more current than the Windows disconnects, which is, you know, if SSH is the way forward, sure. It's just I'm not convinced that, you know, it might be something else going on as well. That's all I'm saying.
Right. It should be fairly easy to test that hypothesis, though. We can pick the one slave that is more prone to this outside of Windows because we don't have SSH there, and move that to SSH. And if that stops disconnecting, then we kind of more confidence that this is a solution.
Is there any server that is really prone to that, not Windows? I think it was pretty random from the disconnects I've seen.
Yeah, I agree. It's very random, and the bigger problem is also that these aren't actually reported through the email because the email runs hourly, and these jobs pretty much disconnect, and then the bot reconnects within, I don't even know, like a few minutes, if even. So the problem here is that it just seems to be mid-job, goes offline for just a short while, and then comes back. So it's really tricky for us to kind of pinpoint when and where and how, sort of. I think we have a list of, like, every time I've seen it, I've just pasted it to that issue we have, which is, I don't know the issue number here, but it's on our tracker, and there's a few examples of just all kinds of slaves going off.
Okay, yeah, this is the biggest cause of instability in Jenkins right now. Let's follow up on GitHub unless we have some breakthroughs here.
Yeah.
So let's continue with the stand-up. We're kind of late on our schedule. Next is Rod. Rod number 2.
Yeah. This rod number one. No, so Johan's actually covered a lot of what I've been doing as well. We've been doing some stuff together. Some random bits. We now have the OS X machines connecting to, I can't remember which host it is, but you can now SSH into the OS X machines via a proxy tunnel to one of the public hosts we have, just so that they're a bit easier to access and administer. As part of the security effort, we have a private node fork where security patches can be tested by the security team. It's very limited in the people who are part of it, but it's so we can do GitHub collaboration on security patches. So to make that buildable with Jenkins, and testable, I've made the repo parameter. It made the repository a parameter, or at least part of the repository, so you can actually select which repository it's coming from, including switching from HTTPS to Git protocol and using credentials to log in, so we can save the private repository credentials in Jenkins and then run tests from that. So the job's had to change a little bit for that. We'll have to
I'm just wondering if that's safe enough. Like, if we don't want the vulnerability to be disclosed, I guess maybe there's not enough output in the jobs that it matters.
So something I discovered, the node test pull request, because of the way that I think it's Alexis has set it up. Normally Jenkins would tell you the commits since last change, but because of the way it does a rebasing, it only reports the latest commit, so you can actually mask the commit comments in that output when you're doing a test. So there is potential for a bit of leakage of information, and it has to be used with caution, but at least it's possible to do test runs, because one of the problems we've had in the past with security patches is that you don't want to publicize them, so you don't put them through the full test runs.
But I'm thinking that actually, doesn't that job apply the test and commit it somewhere in the public repo? So, like, from the job, you might be able to actually get the full content of the change set.
Maybe with the binary. I don't think so. Maybe with the binary repo, Joao.
Well, doesn't it like check out whatever the base is and then apply the patch and then create a new tag that points to, like it takes your change and applies it to the repo and then commits something, doesn't it?
It doesn't create the tag, it just checks it out locally, but for the cross-compile jobs or the fan jobs, it pushes what it compiles to a secondary repo.
And that's just the build output, isn't it?
Joao, do we put sources there?
We put everything there. We put the exactly what's in the commit that is being tested, plus a folder with compressed binaries, and we decompress them to test.
Yeah, so we might want to. Okay, I'll remove that from the build job or something. Okay, it's good to know.
Yeah, so I put in follow-ups. We need to secure.
Can we just ship the binary and then check out the tests locally with the same commit?
What do you mean?
So for the machines that are fanned, we just distribute the binary, the built binary, and then they check out the tests, and that way we won't distribute it through GitHub, the actual tests.
Yeah, it sounds feasible.
Ideally, the patch would include changes to the test, like a regression test, right?
If the problem is getting the binaries in GitHub, then maybe you can create a copy of test commit that instead of using the fan jobs uses the normal jobs. I think the normal job for ARM was erased, but it should not be difficult to add a PICE to a different job.
Or we could also change the fan job to just push the binaries to GitHub.
Instead of the full source, yeah.
Instead of the full source, and then the test slave would fetch the full source from the private repo and the binary from the intermediate repo.
But I guess the source for the tests might point to, if you're showing exactly how to exploit the...
Well, the source for the test would be in the private repo.
They only go onto the slaves, so that's the only place that they are.
Yeah, okay, so it's going to pull, as long as it pulls from the private one, that's good, okay.
The temporary repo is actually customizable. I don't think I exposed that parameter in test commit, but yeah, I could easily.
Yeah, also the binary
repo
doesn't have to be publicly accessible. It can be accessible only by Jenkins.
We can put Git credentials into Jenkins. Yep, that's okay. As long as we've got that captured in a follow-up, that's fine.
Yep.
I've also been working on 0.10, 0.12 support. It's mainly actually working in Node Core, but there has been a few changes to Jenkins builders, the build script. Sorry, the Jenkins build configuration. That's close to done. I haven't touched Windows yet, but getting there. This is fairly urgent because there is there's a security issue that's bubbled up that we haven't detailed publicly. We haven't announced it publicly, but and it's private enough that it's not super urgent, but it's ideally we should get the fix out as soon as possible. So we need to be able to build 0.10, 0.12 binaries and ship them. So that's fairly urgent. And lastly, this Jenkins redo. I guess after stand-up we can detail for others on the call what the Jenkins problem is, if we haven't done that elsewhere.
Okay. Let's move forward with the stand-up. Rod, was that it for you?
That's it for me, I think, yeah.
Okay, next is Miles.
Hello, I'm new. I just want to kind of get a better idea of how the build process is working. I was digging through the Ansible scripts a little bit. I'm working on Canary in the Goldmine, which would be the smoke testing utility, going through and just making sure that that utility is fully unit tested and ready to start being refactored. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I'll be kind of hanging out in the rafters, and if I see there's places where I can contribute, I'll start chiming in.
Great, welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Next is Ryan.
Okay. I've been mostly just lurking. I tried to help out a little bit with some of the connectivity issues for Jenkins, but since Strongloop was just acquired by IBM, making IBM probably a little more overrepresented on this working group than some of the others, I haven't had a huge amount of time, but hopefully I can help with some of this Jenkins rework stuff. So, yeah, on to the discussing.
So just to back up to the Canary in the Goldmine thing that Miles mentioned, there was a discussion, I can't remember where it was, but it was about ownership of smoke testing and whether that should be part of Build or LTS. I think the agreement was to make it part of LTS, but there's obvious overlap with the Build working group. So just to be aware, wherever that lands up.
To speak to that, I think that it's going to be important for collaboration on both sides. Like right now I'm viewing it as kind of in a black box, just getting the utility to work. But once it's ready to go in CI, I'm imagining close collaboration with the build group to getting that into production.
Okay, let's move on to the actual meat of the meeting. It's already about 40 minutes. So the next section on the list is previous review meeting, but I suggest we skip this and we go to the issues on the agenda to make sure that we can get some traction on those. And then if there is time, go back to. So the first one on the list is option to run V8 test suite. Issue 199. Let me open this. Does anyone have any context on this? Want to use it?
Yeah, I mean, it was suggested that we want to run the V8 tests that are in from the code that's in the deps directory in Node. Particularly, for LTS where we have to potentially float patches and have to do that for longer. James has started some work on that front, and actually, I'm hoping that Brian from one of the IBM teams in Toronto was actually going to try and pick some of that up and work on that in the next couple of weeks to push it forward. The goal being to get it to the point where you have a target where you can run those tests from within Node, and then we'd want to set up the CI to do that on some regular basis. I'm not sure if I don't think it would necessarily be as part of the regression tests because they are fairly long. But we might look at running them once a day, or I don't know. Maybe having a job that when we make V8 changes specifically we run would make sense.
So do we not have the ability to run their tests right now?
Yeah, like right now there's not enough pieces within. Actually, I shouldn't say that. There's not necessarily enough pieces with. There may be all the pieces that we need within the deps directory, but you need to download dependencies, and the process is not that straightforward to be able to run the tests. So it's a matter of figuring out, what steps do you need to do it, and if there's any missing pieces from the deps directory, we might want to add a couple of those in. I mean, the issue is now that we actually have a version of V8 that, due to our floating patches, may not exist anywhere else except in Node, and therefore, no tests. The actual V8 tests haven't been run on it, and so being able to do that would help us, avert regressions, particularly if we're floating new V8 type patches.
I see. So it sounds like getting this into Jenkins somehow would be a good achievement.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Brian is from the IBM team will hopefully do the work to say here's how we get it working, and I volunteered once that's done to set up some Jenkins jobs for it.
Right, if we could do like a daily run, and then we can look at optimizing the scripting and all the pieces.
Yeah.
But if you can get it to work even a quick and dirty way, at least we get it in a daily job.
Yep.
Okay. So this is on your plate, Michael, or?
Yeah. Well, yeah. You can tag me to report on progress. It depends on Brian actually doing a bunch of the work, but I can follow up with him and report on status as we move forward.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we know what we need to do to make progress on this.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else has anything to comment on this issue?
I wonder whether there's stuff we can use from the V8 team's build bot configuration to help with this. I don't know how public any of that is.
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't seen. I mean, I've tracked the builds there, but I haven't seen any of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. I mean, running the V8 tests themselves isn't that hard. We have, we run those regularly and have Jenkins jobs that do that. But
depot tools, all that crap.
Yeah, it's all that stuff. It's just that it doesn't use the version we have in Node. It uses the version that we're checking out from Google directly.
So running tests in the V8 environment is easy. Creating a CI job is also easy. So probably the hardest part is figuring out the dependencies, how to get the dependencies in place, correct?
Yeah, like it may be
the prerequisites.
A quick and dirty could be, you follow the same flow that you use if you're just doing it for V8, but at some point you copy the source from the dependency directory into where V8 testing expects it to be.
Right, that will be acceptable. And once that breaks, we will be motivated to make the process a bit better.
Right. So yeah, I don't know exactly. I don't know how far James got and what approach he used, but that's one I can think of that should be relatively straightforward. But we'll catch up with what James already did and then start from there.
Okay, so let's move on to the next issue. PPC platforms as part of the standard release. Michael, I believe this is also going to be your
Yeah, that one I guess I just wanted to ask. I mean, I know Rod had said he would add take the next step, which was to add to the nightlies, and really I just thought I'd take this opportunity to say, is that something that I can help out with, or is it just a smaller subset of people who can do those pieces?
A bit of both. Probably some help you can do. Ideally, we should have separate machine to do the release builds from, but it doesn't matter so much for nightlies.
I have those machines actually.
Oh, okay.
So like I have 2 extra machines for the releases. I haven't configured them, so I don't know if, do I configure them with Ansible like I did the other machines, or is there something different?
Yeah, you do, but you'll need to put in some SSH configuration for uploading to the staging server. That's the only bit. So set them up like before. Make sure you give them a name in Jenkins that is release rather than build.
Okay.
You'll see a pattern in there.
Okay.
And then then ping me and I'll tell you how to get the SSH configuration in there. And
okay.
It's probably a lot you can do to do it. I'll just have to talk you through some of it.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So yeah, I'll start by just doing the regular install, and then I'll ping you through Gitter. Is that?
Yeah, IRC preferably. I'm finding
IRC.
Gitter really painful.
Okay. So IRC on the IOJS.
No, we have the
channel?
Node build channel. Node-build. Node-build.
Sorry, I think you were cutting out there. Is IOJS the right channel?
Node-build.
Okay, Node-build. Okay.
Okay, so let's pick that one.
That's all there on that one. Yeah.
Okay, shall we move to the next issue then? Take that as a yes. Jenkins downtime. So we had a potential security vulnerability in Jenkins. This is why we took the Jenkins down. I don't know how much we should disclose publicly about the details of this vulnerability. Rod, do you have any opinion on that?
So Johan and I chatted about level of disclosure, and I think we've. Johan, do you want to tell everyone about the details of it? I think the only thing we don't want to disclose is details of the exact items that could potentially have been compromised. Everything else, I think we can open up and tell people about.
Yeah. So. I mean, it's pretty publicly available, this information at this stage. The bug pretty much lies in the deserialization protocol in a very used class in not just Jenkins, but like pretty much all over Java land. So, if you run a Java shop, you're probably having a bad time right about now. What happens was that Saturday, my night, this was disclosed to the build group, and we just chose to take the current Jenkins down. All work we've done so far hasn't really indicated that anything has happened to our environment, but we still chose to reprovision everything, so that's why it's been taking quite a while to get everything back to work. What we've also done is actually looked at other ways of for instance, handling authentication. So what we're doing right now as well is moving from having a user credentials store in Jenkins and using the GitHub authentication plug instead. The current status is that we've reprovisioned the new Jenkins hosts. We've reviewed all configs and moved them over. And by configs, I mean all jobs and central configs. We've left some jobs that was tied to specific users, and not for a security reason, but rather that we just wanted a smaller subset to get going with. That's done. We've added most of the old slaves, but we've started reprovisioning the old slaves onto new VMs as well. Again, there's no indication of any security issues, but like it's just stupid to be in an unknown state, so that's why we're just reprovisioning it. So the general status is that the OS X slaves are still to be put online, but otherwise I think we are soon good to go, with an emphasis on having to rebuild the release slaves before we do any kinds of releases. But then what we'll be doing from now is pretty much just reprovision as we go. So every time we have a moment, we'll just recreate the VMs and move forward. Is there anything you would like to add, Rod? Okay. Well,
the part that concerns me about this is that this is the first time that this happened that we found a security vulnerability in Jenkins. But actually, this problem has been around for a few months. Correct me if I'm wrong. And we just came to learn about it recently. And it wouldn't surprise me if security vulnerabilities were all over the place in Jenkins, right? There's Jenkins code, there's plugin code, and if we start really scrutinizing, we might find more. And so I'm concerned about the impact that this had on this infrastructure and the build working group. Every time we discover a security vulnerability in Jenkins, do we have to reprovision everything? How do we make it so that the cost of doing this, of dealing with security issues, is not as massive as this time?
Yeah, I mean, this issue, if exploited, it's pretty nasty. You pretty much get like access to the host machine.
And I think also it's like been possibly around for 9 months. So there's the severity and also the time. So we just want to be extra sure, because as far as we know, somebody could have been messing around on our server 8 months ago, and we have no idea. So in this particular case, I think it's severe enough to warrant this. In other cases, this is, I think this one is a special case, unless Jenkins turns out to have lots of the holes just like this one.
Yeah.
So we can assume if the master is compromised, then there's nothing that we can do to protect the slaves, or.
Well, that's a standpoint we've chosen to take. Obviously, there's a lot of work that needs to be done for a possible intruder to like exploit that far, but we've just chosen to accept that standpoint instead and reprovision as we go. I also guess it's worth mentioning that we've looked at different ways of hardening the CI server, and a few measures we've done now is limiting access to the J and LP protocol by IP access. So every time we add a slave, we also limit access for that slave to one IP address. We will look at different ways of trying to harden Jenkins, but obviously there's a lot of Java codes written by someone somewhere. Yeah, I'm not saying that Jenkins has a long history of security holes, because it actually looks okay. But for this one, since it's been around for so long, it's better to just do a full review and assume a clean interface. So all plugins and everything is not transferred, but rather re-downloaded from source.
Right. I guess we could also strive to automate the deployment of slaves. Right now we do deployment with Ansible, but to provision those machines, it's kind of a manual process, right, to do so across all the different cloud providers.
Yeah.
So if there was a way that we could just, redeploy all the machines with a script, ideally this would reduce the impact or something like this.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. It requires us to interact with the cloud APIs and all that stuff. But obviously, if we end up there, that'd be pretty interesting. I think it's out of my time frame, but if someone else wants to have a look at it, that sounds good.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about this downtime?
Yeah, I guess that the only question we have now is, when are we back online? And I will. We have an issue on the Node repo about this, which is a bit too quiet. So I'll do an update there in terms of hopefully an ETA, but also like how does this impact you? I think we might be having some issues with the GitHub authentication plugin and access to different types of features. So we're going to have to review that. But during today, which is Wednesday here in Australia, hopefully we can have everything up and running.
I put this on the agenda, the GitHub API status supporting flaky tests, because that sounded like something that potentially we could discuss further and maybe gather some opinions and make a decision. The question was how to report flaky tests on the status API. We kind of skipped over that during Johan's stand-up.
Yeah, there's an issue on there. I've kind of driven the discussion, but I'm happy to, I just notified that I'm going to take a step back in terms of architecture and probably take another approach. So I'm happy to, get other people involved or interested in discussing it.
Yeah, okay. Maybe we can put this on the follow-ups. What is the issue number?
Give me a sec. 236.
Okay. Yeah. Please go take a look. You should please share your opinion or any suggestions on how to deal with this problem of flaky tests with the current status API approach. If only flaky tests fail, we get an all green, which kind of masks the fact that there are flaky test failures, which is something that we kind of wanted to avoid in the beginning when we introduced the flaky test support. So maybe the approach is to show it as red, and then you expand and you show that there are some only flaky test failures, or maybe we can live with this and make the flaky test more manageable going forward. But yeah, we can follow up on GitHub.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to be careful not to make people look too hard, because if it's always red, then I wonder if they'll look when they do the regression tests.
Yeah, and I mean the concept of flaky is a tricky one, because we say that it's okay because it's known. So, we'd get the same result from people clicking into CI and seeing that it's flaky. It's not like most people, or I don't know, I'm not going to generalize, but the assumption could be made that, it is flaky, so therefore I can move on.
I think that's, yeah, that would be my assumption too, that people are just going to say, oh, don't have to worry about that.
Yes. I mean, where I draw the line is that if that test fails all the time, at that point, there's no added value in running it, right? You should disable it. So the point is that flaky should be the exception, not the rule. If you start seeing something flaky all the time, then you better investigate it, right?
Yeah, as well as if you go
So if you want to see the visibility of something flaky every once in a while, but if you start seeing yellow all the time, then maybe there's something wrong.
I mean, maybe it's, not easy to do, but ideally it would be like, if it hasn't, if you've actually failed 10 times in a row, even though it's marked as flaky, it should show up as failed. Although I guess for somebody running the CI, that's still not necessarily something they want to investigate, because their change didn't cause the problem, right?
Yeah. And the other problem is that a lot of the flaky tests are flaky, meaning you probably don't see it 10 times in a row. You see it like 30% of the time or 40% of the time, or that you have timing issues or some other environmental issues that makes it temporary.
Yes, but then let's say the tests start failing 100% of the time, but it's marked as flaky, and then you lose that visibility, right?
Yeah, because you probably did break something in that case.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep an eye on this issue. Follow up on that GitHub issue on the status API. Maybe is it possible in the status API to say, okay, this failed 10 times in a row?
No, you essentially pass success, error, or failure. Error meaning something broke in the build process. And then you just get a string of text you pass and then identifier. So not really. And I mean, the way I get my information, but the script gets the information is through the API of Jenkins. So I do an XPath query on the XML API, and I pull out the vitals of each job. So I can't really get it there either. So we need to introduce some extra logic at CI.
Right. It would be very hard to do anyway to correlate with previous changes. Even on the same branch, maybe some change was rejected because it introduced a problem.
So, yeah.
I guess, I mean, if we move on to a small node script that, actually polls, we can also poll the prior ones because we have more time to spend at that phase. So, obviously, that script could take that into consideration.
I wonder if we need to push this in terms of visibility of how long tests have been marked flaky. Because it's really the number and how long they stick around as flaky that means how likely we're going to run into these problems.
Yes, I was supposed to follow up on that and open an issue through that resolution. Still on my plate.
Because maybe if in this group we reviewed each time we met that okay, there's 10 and they've been open for 25 days or 100 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a sounder approach. We need to follow up on these tests and fix them. I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember us having this discussion when we discussed having flaky tests at all, and I mean that's still valid. That we need to have a procedure for making sure we always follow up. I think we should try and bring Richard Todd into the discussion as well because he does a lot of work with resolving flaky tests and just what is his terms of visibility and how does he see those tests reported? So I'll pull him into this discussion as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also probably a good thing, looking at some of these flaky tests might be a good thing for some new contributors as well. So.
Yes, we do have a procedure right now. The official procedure is that when we mark it as flaky, we mark it so, and we open an issue to track it, and we set that issue on the next milestone.
Yeah.
But then what happened in a couple instances recently that we hit that 5.0 milestone, and we were like, okay, let's kick the ball to the next milestone. So we need to improve that process so that we take those tests more seriously, and that means assigning them to people, or if that means blocking work, we just need to find a way for the whole team to take responsibility and fix those tests.
Yeah, and it's like if we don't fix them in a year, then it comes back to, well, maybe they should just be deleted, right?
Yes. I'll open an issue on that. It's on my plate already. Okay, it's 5:03. We're past the hour.
I had one more quick question, if we can take 2 more minutes. It's around, for the benchmarking, if I actually start to generate some results, do we have any existing machines that we use to store sort of longer-term data?
Not that I know, at least. And there's also the visualization of that data. That's, at least from what I know, not available either. So there's a bit of work in terms of, what do we do with the results from the benchmarking?
Right. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure there wasn't something already there, and the other thing is I assume nobody would object if I spun up another machine to hold the database to hold some of that kind of data.
Not at all.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. That's it.
Let's close up.
There's probably some issues in the benchmarking group to discuss this. I'm not very active there, so I don't know, but yeah, have a look there.
Yeah, no, I'm actively involved there, and so yeah, I'll track the stuff there. Just wanted to make sure here there wasn't anything that we duplicate.
No. Nope.
Okay.
Okay, we should probably close up. We're past the hour. Thank you for joining. Great meeting, lots of things to discuss since we're only meeting every 3 weeks. And the last time was 6 weeks ago, so maybe we should try to do it every 3 weeks as a tentative cadence.
Yeah, sure. And
Okay.
hopefully we don't have another CI issue. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just finishing up the OS X machines, but we should have most of them back on. Johan, did you want to hassle Michael about any of the PPC machines?
No, I've got access to all of them, and then I added the host to Ansible setup as well. So it's on there.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, well, I mean, they seem to be. I ran some builds today, and they seem to be there. Is there anything else that needs to happen?
Oh yeah, there's one missing. The what's it called? The benchmark, software layer benchmark machine. I can't find the IP for that. So if you could add that to, I think it's part of the 1404 deploy. So if you can add the host to that README markdown.
Okay, yeah, that one I probably didn't add to the, and even actually some of the newer machines to the, yeah.
Yeah, the -2s. Yeah, those ones I've actually added. I managed to find out the IP and I had access. So.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I'll find the benchmarking one. And so, sorry, where do you want me to add it to again? Just
add it to. I think the way we collect host information right now is through the markdown document for each for each distribution. It's not optimal, but it's something.
And that's in the GitHub repo?
Yeah, so in build setup, Ubuntu 14.04, you have like a README and like add this to your host's example.
Ah, okay. Okay, I'll look there. If I don't find it, I'll let you know. But I should be able to find that.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I created an issue about generating a host file from a script. We could just iterate all of these READMEs and get them out there.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Please do look at the follow-ups we took note of. I'll do a pass in the next day or two. Make sure we open issues on GitHub at least to track these items.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.
Okay, great. Talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.